Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsay, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. I have some very exciting news. The book I have been working on for the last 20 months is finally available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other outlets. It took me years to figure out the subject of the book that I just had to write. When I did, it took a hold of me and didn't let go until I was finished. The subject became clear to me after providing approximately 20,000 hours of psychotherapy, 200 podcast interviews, and reading dozens of books. In all of these experiences, there was a common theme. They all talked about the importance of connection. The only problem was I didn't hear connection defined in the 4 ways we can experience it, which, as I see it, includes connection to ourselves, others, the world, and to something greater. The book is called Super Psyched. Unleash the power of the 4 types of connection and live the life you love. I am so grateful that it has received supportive blurbs from scores of my favorite thought leaders like Lori Gottlieb, Daniel Pink, Guy Kawasaki, Mel Robbins, and many others. So I thought I would do something different for this episode. One of the best interviewers I have ever known is Bronwyn Saglimbeni. Bronwyn is renowned for her abilities to help people with communication, serving as the top coach for the TEDx event at Stanford University, where she coached people like Dr. Philip Zimbardo and dozens of other speakers. Bronwyn hosted me on her podcast, 20 Minutes with Bronwyn, a number of times and got me in to the podcast world. And she even coached me for both of my TEDx talks. And as you will hear, she has just the right energy to bring out mine. So a hearty thanks to Bronwyn for joining me as she interviews and lets me be the guest on my own podcast. Bronwyn Saglimbeni, thank you so much for joining me and bringing me out on my own podcast.
Adam, first of all, congratulations. Your book, baby, they are beautiful. The cover, the structure, the whole thing, I can only imagine what you went through to give birth to this, because I know what a perfectionist you are. I know how you labor over words. And so I just first want to say congratulations.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then second, what I want to do is ask you why you wrote this book. Your podcast covers so much terrain. There's so many ways you could have, you knew you had a book in you. Why this one? And why now?
These are really related. People ask me, how do you choose who will be on your podcast? And the answer is, do they get me excited? That's the criterion. And excitement in and of itself is a very important electrical response that we have. It's not very well defined. Similar to connection, I have heard after doing about 20,000 hours of psychotherapy with clients, after over 200 interviews, the one thing that we're all looking for in this lifetime is this thing called connection, but it's not well defined. If you look it up in the Oxford Dictionary, it kind of gives you a rather rote definition. If you look it up in the APA Dictionary, it's not even there. If you look it up in Psych Central, it only relates to how we connect to other people. We connect in 4 different ways. We connect with ourselves, we connect with others, we connect with the world. And for many of us, we connect with something greater, such as spirit. I wanted this defined. So what I did was I really looked into what is connection and where can we find it, and how might each of us need different expressions, different experiences, different stimuli to allow us to feel connected. What you find connecting, I might not find connecting, and vice versa.
How do you know if you're feeling disconnected? I think the pulse of electricity with excitement is such a great marker for that is one dimension of what you're talking about. How do you know when you're in the opposite realm? How does it feel?
I'm going to make it really simple. I'm going to say firm handshake versus limp handshake. if you're feeling limp handshake, and we all know what that feels like.
The
It's
worst.
not great. One of our mutual friends, Olivia Fox-Gabang, who wrote The Charisma Myth, she said that having a good handshake is more important than the world's most expensive watch. We need that. It's one of the biggest predictors of a good connection later on down, because that first impression is, how are we actually physically connecting in this handshake? So I'm going to go with, if you're feeling limp handshake, let's say you're told that you should love this musical. It's a smash, and everybody's telling you you must love it. And you leave Cats. Oops, I'm sorry. Anyway, you leave and you say to yourself, what was that? That really sucked. That is a legitimate experience. One of the great things that I learned in my podcast was from the world's leading olfaction expert. She wrote a book called That's Disgusting, and Why You Eat What You Eat. And she basically says, if you absolutely find something disgusting, you will, in all likelihood, never come around to liking it. Don't try to train yourself. There are ways that we can cultivate tastes. Sometimes there are these things, like for some people, they are kind of acquired tastes and they didn't love them initially, but they came to love them. But if you find something absolutely disgusting, and for me, a limp handshake, not great. And if I'm watching something and I just know this is not my thing, it's probably not my thing.
And instead, what do? Using the Cats metaphor, you come out of Cats and you think, what? I must be nuts.
Everybody else here loved it, right?
It's and then that leads to that disconnection. So that feeling of connection that you're describing in these 4 different dimensions, or 4 different sort of vectors, or whatever you want to call them, is that feeling of recognition, of electricity, of, how would you describe it when you're in the bullseye of it?
So I'm going to ask you, when you're talking about your daughter, does your face light up? And I'm watching you. You are connected.
Sure does.
She is all the way far away right now, which I don't want to bring on the waterworks, because I just dropped off my kid at college last year, and boy, did I ugly cry. And of course, my younger son decided to prank me by playing Freebird by Lynyrd Skynyrd. And so I was like, yeah, yes, please. But your face lights up. There's a connection. And if I was to ask you to talk about your dog, you'd go there too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And for some people who kind of reluctantly have a dog and they don't love dogs, they don't feel connected. Their faces are not going to light up. So I'm going to go with limp handshake, strong handshake as one of the metaphors I would use.
I love that. One of the most interesting, I don't want to say interesting because the book is full of interesting moments, but there were moments that really popped for me in the book. And in the section that was talking about our connection to self, you made this really startling connection. God, that word is going to come up a lot. But you made a really startling connection where you were talking about someone named Tetsu. Tell us the story of Tetsu, and then tell us about the arm strength experiment and how those 2 things are related.
Absolutely hilarious. So when I lived in Japan, I would go to the gym multiple times a week. I was lifting weights. I was really strong on the outside. I had these kind of surface muscles. And I went to visit my buddy Sean in Wakayama, whose best buddy was Tetsu. And Tetsu said, I want to arm wrestle you. And I looked at Tetsu and I was like, gosh, you're kind of skinny. This should be a walk in the park. I was in my prime. I was bigger. And the guy, I just felt his arm and I couldn't move it a millimeter. And he smiled at me. And he was just like, I know I've got you. And he just crushed me. He was very, very, very gracious in his victory. But I came to realize this is a guy who's been doing martial arts for years. And he was in touch with his ki, whatever you want to call it, his energy. And he was able to mobilize that. Now, similarly, when we say something that is true, when we live in our truths, we are stronger. We're more resilient. Our immune systems are better. We take more chances. Like before this interview, I decided to wear shorts rather than long pants because it's actually kind of hot in this room. I would be a little less connected with myself and maybe in touch with the discomfort of wearing long pants and instead in my workout gear. And this is just right. So I can be more connected with you and the content. But when we're not strong, it's as if we walk through life with a proverbial rock in our shoe. It doesn't feel good. When we say something that, let's say we're trying to just acquiesce or we're in a place where there are different opinions and we say, oh yeah, I like that too. And you're like, oh my God, I'm so full of it. I don't. There's cognitive dissonance. So we really need to be in our truths. And Tetsu really nailed that on me. It's just such a good metaphor for when we're in our strength and we're in that internal thing rather than the superficial thing.
What I think is so interesting about that example is everybody talks about authenticity and being connected. It's as a construct, everybody nods their head and says, yeah, it's important. But I'd never heard it sort of argued from the perspective of the strength that congruence gives you. Like literal physical, emotional, psychological, spiritual strength when everything is lining up. And that really popped for me. And it's also why I struggle. And I have a feeling you're going to be like, me too, sister. That's why small talk can sometimes be so hard for me. Because if somebody asks me, how are you doing? I'm going to be like, well, which answer do you want? Do you want the truth or do you want, I just had a salad and it was decent? Or do you want to hear, I just dropped off my kid at college and my mother-in-law just passed away and I am putting my life back together? Which version do you want? That's what's so hard, I think, for some of us around humaning with other humans is we want to be congruent. We want to speak our truth, but we also have to be like pleasant and within the realm of what's appropriate. Talk about that for a second.
It's a really complex thing because some people are less comfortable hearing about your grief of your mother-in-law, the matriarch of your great family who just recently passed. They want to talk about nice things. And there's some people who want to talk about real things. Unfortunately, small talk is kind of akin to what happened at the dog park when our dogs first met. They sniffed each other out. And that is small talk. They're sniffing each other out like, where can we go? Can I increase the bid? Can I go from how are you doing superficially to how are you really doing? Obviously, when you're being checked out of Trader Joe's and they ask, so how's your day? They're definitely not asking, how's your day? They're just looking for you to say, it's wonderful, how's yours? And that is not the context.
That is right. That is so true.
Which is sad because in a fantastical world, it would be very interesting if we could actually answer that question.
There's something about the people at Whole Foods. I have been caught up in really deep moments with Whole Foods checkers and being like, how am I here?
And I know exactly who you're thinking about. That would be Dean with the big hair. And he's the best checkout guy ever. He will actually engage in a real conversation.
I feel like when we die and we meet the Earth Angels, I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that's Dean. We've been working on the ground for a long time. I love that. The other line that I wrote down from the book that I just thought was so amazing was, and this also happens to be with connection to self, is this line from James Joyce, Adam. Quote, he lived a short distance from his body.
So good.
Will you talk about connection to self through that lens?
So many of us, sadly, for a host of reasons, live a short distance from our bodies. In Silicon Valley, it's not uncommon because we are so well paid to use our brains that we forgot to even go pee. And we are that disconnected. And we wonder why we can't sleep at night. I myself suffer from this syndrome tremendously. And I know you loved Sir Kenneth Robinson's TED Talk when he described us as heads on carts. Basically another idea similar to James Joyce that we live a short distance. We live a short distance from our body when we say that we are straight and we are not. We live a short distance when we don't want to offend somebody. Our bodies will tell us. And oftentimes they will turn on us. We'll get sick. We'll have erectile dysfunction. A host of things will happen when we are disconnected from our bodies. And if we want to have greater health, and I'm talking about health in general, including mental health, I don't think they should be separated. Lori Gottlieb was very clear on my podcast saying these should not be separated ideas. Health is health, mental or physical. Living more embodied. And some of the things that we can do are exactly what you are doing. You're doing a lot of activities that cause you to sweat and get out there in your body. You're getting into nature. You're experiencing what we call biophilia. And my wife says that every time we go on a vacation and I'm in nature, my face changes. I look different. I'm more connected to my body. When I'm at work, I don't do it enough. So there are some reminders that we can get on our iPhone saying, stand up or breathe or take a drink of water. These are slight bids for us to get more embodied throughout the day. And I think these are good starts.
Is that what you do? Is it like an iPhone reminder? What are some other ways that you've coached people to get more connected to their body? I mean, that is a very real thing. The other day I went to the bathroom and I was like, oh my God, I guess I had to pee. It had been like 7 hours. And I was like, why am I suddenly doubled? Oh, because I haven't been paying attention.
A
like,
million
that's
percent.
absurd. Like, I doubt that 200 years ago, that was the case. Like, maybe I'm making that up. Maybe it's not a modern problem, but what have you seen that people do that actually works to get them back into their bodies?
And before we even go there, if you really got to pee and one of your kids asks you a question, you might be snappy. You might not be your best self, and hurt people end up hurting people, regardless of the source. But how do we get them in their body? Each person is going to be different. Some people like to dance. I do not like to dance. It's really awkward for me, but I love to laugh. Laughter is a full body experience. So I will sometimes during my break watch something absolutely hilarious. I might do a body scan or a meditation. I might go for a walk with my dog and feel the sun. And as you would say, try to count the various things that I see, smell, and other senses experience while I'm out there, and to get more in my body. As I believe it was Rumi, might have been Hafez, one of the great Sufi poets, said, lose your mind and come to your senses. I mean, that's gorgeous. And very often I live so much in my mind, I forget about those senses. And each of us can find ways that are our solid handshake for that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. The other thing that I loved from the book too is the idea of there is no such thing as a guilty pleasure. Can you talk about that? That was like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So when I was in high school, I, like everybody else, conformed. I listened to punk rock, and Wham was not something we were allowed to listen to. That was considered, no, that's teeny bopper.
Chick music.
Totally. Except for the fact that I really liked it and I couldn't tell anybody. And in college, when George Michael came out with his first solo album, I had to listen to it with the doors locked, with the windows rolled up. Nobody could know. It was a, quote, guilty pleasure. I hate that idea of guilty pleasure. If you're hurting no one, it's not a guilty pleasure. We got to stop using that word. It's toxic. It's merely pleasure. George Michael, thank God, has gotten the posthumous recognition he deserved. I was really touched when I saw, sadly, the drummer who passed from Foo Fighters when he was not inducted in the Hall of Fame. He used his time saying, I want George Michael in the Hall of Fame. I was just like, oh my gosh, Taylor Hawkins, thank you so much for saying that. Because, and I'm getting chills right now, because no one has ever touched my soul musically, vocally, like George Michael. And I know each of us is different. Some people might be rolling their eyes when they hear this.
Not me, honey.
The guy was just dialed.
Otherworldly.
Dialed.
Otherworldly. I mean, and ambitious.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. And that's so interesting. I mean, Adam, what do you think is behind that? What systems or mentalities stand to gain by shaming people out of letting the warm animal of their body want what it wants, or whatever Mary Oliver's beautiful poem says? Why are we doing that to each other?
So it goes deep in our biology. We are tribal. Robert Sapolsky of Stanford described that when we see somebody from our tribe, our natural endogenous oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, goes up. And when we see somebody from outside of our tribe, it goes either stable or down. We don't feel as much empathy. We want to feel connected, so we conform. It's almost like a body dysmorphia of sorts, to fit in. Brene Brown says the opposite of belonging is just fitting in. And I agree with that. And
hold on. The opposite of belonging is just fitting in.
Right? And we've all done that. For our survival, we really needed to think tribally. Our brains really only do two things. They're wired for our survival and for energy conservation. And it uses less energy to agree. And it increases the likelihood that we survive if we agree. So when my friend clowns on me and says, oh my God, doesn't George Michael suck? And I'm like, I know, right? And in my entire body's like, I love George Michael. What do I do with that? So the bottom line is, this is not good for us. And we are shamed by others because we are reinforced for being affiliated. It's us and it's them. And there's no greater bond than having a common enemy.
But as you're talking, it's an interesting false choice. I think a lot of what keeps us out of connection is that we think we either live our authentic selves outside the tribe, lonely in our nightmares, as Duran Duran once said. Or I'm going to sneak that in. Or we get quote unquote connected and fit in. But that's a false choice. Those are not the options, Adam. What's the actual game we're playing? It's not either you're in or out of a tribe. The connection game is different. How do you characterize it?
I would love it if people really leaned into this idea of you do you. It's really important. It's a yes and proposition. What we learn from improvisational work is it's not a no but. It is a yes and. Oh, you're into that. I am not. And that is really cool. Tell me about why you're so into that. Yeah. And it's such an important skill to have that curiosity, and maybe even to say, even though I'm not into it, I get a vicarious thrill hearing about your thrill about being into that.
About it.
And what can just kill a conversation is the 3 letters TMI. That's shaming. I've never said that to anyone. I won't.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we just give a moment of appreciation for that? When I'm on the receiving end of somebody saying TMI, the shame I feel in that moment, and I am not somebody who goes around TMIing all over the place.
For sure, you don't.
It's the worst, Adam. Why? Okay, so why do people do that? Because it seems so mean.
Well, their discomfort, in all likelihood, I'm just coming up with a hypothesis, is mediated by their affiliation with that topic. If you're talking about a topic that causes them discomfort, they shut you down and make you wrong for having brought it up, rather than saying, you know what? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. For whatever reason, I cannot hear about this due to something within me.
It has nothing to do with you.
Right. Like, what if you were to say that instead? That would be far kinder. It would be using it, that I message that we all talked about. And it doesn't make you wrong for wanting to share about your mother-in-law's passing if somebody's uncomfortable about it.
Yeah.
So TMI is, nobody would say that, of course, in any social situation about your mother-in-law's passing, but they might say it about something else. And it's far better to just own it and say, oh my gosh, you know what? That particular topic is something that I'm not particularly comfortable with.
I'm not able to go there right now.
I can't go there right now.
Yeah, it's so good. And actually, what it kind of brings me back to is this larger question I had as I was reading the book. Like, you have this amazing life that you've built for yourself. I am obsessed with this idea of a handmade life. It's something that I read. Clarissa Pinkola Estes said it years ago.
So good.
People that create a life of their own making, not something that was handed to them or that they fell into, but something that they lovingly rendered and constructed. And you've done that. You've got this incredible therapeutic practice, psychotherapy. And by the way, you're not just a therapist in an office. You're also the keynote speaker for the California Psychological Association's annual conferences. You're kind of a big freaking deal. But like, you have your practice, but then you also are out there sort of following your curiosity and that electrical pulse of enthusiasm and fascination. And you've made this beautiful life for yourself. How does that impulse to make your life what you want it to be, how does that inform the way you coach your clients?
That's such a great question. I'd have to start with me being disconnected. I lived a life of great disconnection. I had ADHD and dyslexia and really was struggling to grow academically and professionally. Dropped out of a doctoral program, entered the corporate arena, did fairly well there, but like that limp handshake, I was not really embodied. I was not super stoked. I certainly was not super psyched. And then at around the age of 38, after I'd had my first child, I woke up in the middle of the night and had a panic attack because I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing. And I was sure, unequivocal, that I wouldn't be able to change course because it was totally inconvenient as a married man, a dad, a homeowner, the whole thing. Like, how in the world do you change course? When I found a way to change course, and it took a lot of creativity in designing this life, it was like I went to a candy store where everything was delicious and good for you and free. And I have been going out of my mind with joy ever since I decided to change course, because this is everything I've ever wanted. So when we find something, the ikigai, which is the Japanese 4-circle approach to looking at our life's purpose, they talk about what we're good at, what we love, what we can get paid for, and what the world needs. And that creamy center, that creamy sweet center is our ikigai. For sure, this has been mine. And this was the byproduct of
years of therapy and pain and trying to figure out and not being willing to accept myself as a therapist. Like that was what I needed to do. I probably could have found a few other routes in my life that would have been equally fulfilling. I don't think there's one single route for any single person. I think that all of us could do multiple things, but this was definitely one of them for me. And if we are intentional, that word intentional just keeps showing up about even just how we use our weekend. Maybe we don't love our jobs and maybe we will not be able to change course, but maybe we can find a different way to apply our musculature to the job and feel more alive. Like Amy Resniewski out of Yale School of Management has found that people who are on the janitorial staff of hospitals often find their work more fulfilling than the doctors there if they have some capacity to define their roles. So they had basically determined they were ambassadors of the hospital. They weren't just cleaning. They were also people who talked to the patients. And they would be invited over to the patients' homes for Thanksgiving after the patient left the hospital. They would develop these meaningful connections. And I think that we can all do that. We can lean into our values and ask ourselves, one of my top values, I learned about this. You can look on viacharacter.org. They have a free inventory where you can find out what your top strengths are. How can I lean into one of my strengths? So if I did need to stay at my former job, I could have done that more and found ways. And to some extent I did, but it's all the better, of course, if it's totally aligned with everything you're all about.
God, it's just so true. And that makes so much sense to me. In fact, it's so funny. Like when you finally hit that sweet spot and you find your dharma, it's amazing to see how everything that led to that moment was exactly what you needed. Like you couldn't be as credible with people that are corporate people had you not come through that system. Like if somebody had just been purely academic or just purely in a therapeutic model or in a hospital system or whatever it is, it's a different lens. And you have the lens of both, which is what makes you so freaking good at what you do.
Thanks. And I'm so grateful that I did have that corporate experience because it does inform me. The other thing that was interesting, and this is since we're both dog people, the metaphor I've used is for decades, I've been like a dog standing by the door wanting to go for a walk. And when I finally entered this profession, I finally got to take my walk, and I walk with that energy of, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like I remember when I was in group supervision with young people who were substantially younger than I was, and they went straight from college to graduate school towards getting their doctorate. And I was in group supervision, and I must have looked so unbelievably excited. And they were like, dude, it's just group soup, chill. And I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. We're learning. I was so happy.
I just love that so much, Adam. That is just, God, it's so fun to be in the presence of somebody that is this stoked. I mean, that's why people listen to the show, because they are hooked up to somebody who's stoked. Super psyched.
And I also want to be clear, super psyched does not mean being super happy all the time. It means super connected to our psyches, because when I'm sad, I get really sad too. And when I'm kind of meh, I can get meh. But I try to just really be authentic with how I'm feeling when I'm feeling it. It can also mean super psych education, but yeah, I'm so glad that you get it. And by the way, the other people who were fellow interns, they joined me. They got stoked as well. They weren't just like, oh, what a weirdo. Although interestingly, I remember in college once, somebody said, wow, you get enthusiastic. She said, you're really easily impressed. And I said, no, I just have a really high capacity for appreciation. And so I think that it's an important thing. We can get shamed because she was looking at me askance, like, dude, what's wrong with you? And I'm like,
You're like, this is what unbridled joy looks like. You can have some if you turn that frown upside down, girl.
You can have some. Come on. It's not going to kill you.
So let me bring this to closure. For the person listening who this podcast is part of their practice for staying connected or getting more connected, and they're thinking to themselves, I don't have any extra time to do more than just listen to this podcast. Help. How do I get more connected? And time is scarce. What do you say to someone who's in that scarcity mindset around time and whether or not they have time to practice this 4 different dimensions of connection?
I would simply say this. Look at how you're using time. People sometimes when they're on diets, photograph what they're about to eat. Very often, the time suckers are us going on social media. That's the number one. We might be able to reallocate that time. Are you actually deriving a return on investment for your time when you're doom scrolling or on social media? Could you possibly get 15 to 30 minutes out of that? And if you did, what would be just one area, one thing you would do? It might be a Zoom meeting with a friend who lives across country you don't get to see all that often. It could be going outside and doing the full park course at the park. Be intentional and figure out, after the thing that you've done, did it grow me or did it in some ways take away from me? If it grew you, if you felt better, in all likelihood, you had a real connection. So just look at one thing that you can do, one thing at a time. Build upon this like a series of Legos or building blocks, whatever metaphor you want.
Yeah.
And steps are basically look at how you're using your time and ask yourself, is there something I could do with 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it might be?
And also what I love about that is it's a closed system because there's a debrief where you're like, okay, did that fill me up? How did that feel? Which is rewiring our assumptions, right? It's the glucose saving model. It's if we start to get used to the fact that habitually taking the dog to the park for 20 minutes is a real freaking energy plus, then it's easier for us to just know that and just go without even having to think about it.
100%. We don't like going with what's hard. We don't like the activation energy it requires. We want to do the easy thing. And it's right now all on our phones. And I have no problem with that if it's used like salt. Use it a little bit, but use it too much and you've oversalted the meal. So use it properly and what it's meant to do and get into your life. Figure out one or two things that will give you something back. I usually refer to the debrief with yourself as kind of the drive away test. I got that from like how I feel after I hang out with a friend. Do I feel taller and happier? Do I feel shorter? Do I feel used? This is the same basic technology that can be used with an activity.
Yes. Actually, you know what, Adam, what you're describing, the drive away test, that is the connection test. I mean, it works in all of the dimensions that you just described.
100%.
When I drive away from church, did it lift me up or did it not? That's all you need to know whether you're succeeding on those 4 different categories. The drive away test solves all the problems I'm trying to see.
It's funny. I haven't said this before, but part of what happens when I talk to somebody like you, or more specifically you, it's like a collision of awesome in a certain way. Like I had never said strong handshake or limp handshake. That came as the byproduct of me talking to one of the most interesting, fun people who I know will meet me. It just showed up. And I'm going to be using that metaphor moving forward because
it's the byproduct of really high quality connection, my friend.
That's
right?
it. Oh,
this is why we do podcasts, Adam, because we love this feeling. And this feeling is only possible when you're with somebody else. It's the human connection.
So true.
Well, I just want to thank you on behalf of the entire universe of people who can read or listen, because I'm sure the audiobook is either available or coming soon someday.
It will be available the same day, October 1st.
Amazing. Thank you for the blood, sweat, and tears that went into this beautiful offering for the world. And may this not be the last time we hear from Dr. Adam Dorsay in written form. May this just be the beginning.
Well, thank you. And one thing I'd be remiss in mentioning if I didn't is something that I learned from AJ Jacobs. He said something so good. He said, my name is on the cover of the book, but there are 100 people I owe thanks to without whom this book could not have come. And for my book, same thing, about 100 people, the biggest of whom would have to be my wife, who sat next to me and looked at my final manuscript and just asked, does this sound right? I call her my book tuner, like a piano tuner. So I'm just so grateful to the folks who've influenced me. And Bronwyn, you have influenced me massively.
Wow, that goes both ways, Adam. That goes both ways. Thank you for letting me interview you about your book, baby, too. What an honor.
The best. Couldn't have been anybody else.
Awesome. Super psyched.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsay thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.